Billy Graham, the man who inspired millions, held secrets no one could have imagined. Behind the pulpit, behind the headlines, his life carried layers the world never saw. Decades of appearances hid a story that only now begins to stir curiosity. Every gesture, every word, every decision might have meant more than anyone realized. The truth of his life has always been closer and stranger than it seems. Billy Graham was born on November 7, 1918, on a 300-acre dairy farm in Charlotte, North Carolina. Life on the farm was hard and demanding. Each day began before sunrise and ended long after sunset, filled with chores that tested both strength and patience. His father was strict and expected complete obedience, while his mother carried quiet, unwavering faith. As the oldest of 4 children, Billy learned responsibility quickly. He learned how to care for younger siblings, manage the animals, and help tend the fields. Yet amidst the busyness, he also learned a deeper lesson: what it felt like to be alone. The wide open fields, the endless chores, and the long, silent nights left him with a lot of time to think. He often wondered if there was more to life than hard work, sweat, and silence, though he could not yet imagine what that might be. As a teenager, Billy pushed against the rigid rules that had shaped his early years. He sought freedom in baseball games, laughter with friends, beer, and even small bets. Religion seemed distant, almost irrelevant, and he avoided church whenever he could. Freedom felt alive, thrilling, and real. Yet beneath the outward bravado, a quiet loneliness grew. Nights on the farm were filled with an aching emptiness. Billy felt restless, as if a part of him was missing, something he could not yet name. He wrestled silently with questions about life and meaning, unsure where to turn and frustrated by the confinement he had always known. Everything began to change in 1934 when Billy attended a revival meeting led by the evangelist Mordecai Ham. He did not expect to feel anything. Yet that night, something stirred deep within him. For the first time, he felt a conviction he could not ignore. A pull on his heart that seemed both frightening and necessary. Soon after, he opened his mother's old Bible. He did not fully understand why he did it. He only knew that reading those worn pages brought a comfort and curiosity he had never felt before. It was a spark of awareness that would grow into a calling far larger than the farm or the fields. In 1936, Billy enrolled at Bob Jones College in Tennessee. The strict rules and rigid expectations clashed with a boy who loved freedom. After only a few months, he left, seeking a place where he could explore his beliefs without suffocating restrictions. He transferred to Florida Bible Institute where he could study, question, and grow. There he was baptized by immersion and joined the Southern Baptist Convention, taking his first deliberate steps toward faith. Billy Graham's journey was far from simple. The boy who once sought nothing but freedom was learning to face something far greater than himself. He was discovering that life could hold both purpose and struggle, faith and doubt, and that the restlessness he had always felt was perhaps the first sign of the extraordinary path ahead. The struggle between who he was and who he might become had just begun, and the choices ahead would shape a life that would touch millions. After graduating from Florida Bible Institute, Billy Graham moved to Wheaton College in Illinois. There he immersed himself in study and life on campus, graduating in 1943 with a degree in anthropology. But his education was more than books and lectures. At Wheaton, he began shaping the voice that would one day speak to millions. He served at the United Gospel Tabernacle in downtown Wheaton, stepping into crowded rooms, preaching in nearby Chicago, and learning to speak with clarity and honesty. Every sermon, every conversation helped him discover how to reach people where they were, not just where he wished they would be. It was also at Wheaton that his personal life found its anchor. In 1943, he married Ruth Bell, the daughter of L. Nelson Bell, a medical missionary in China. Ruth was more than a wife. She became his partner, confidant, and support in a life that would demand much from both of them. Their love was rooted in shared faith, but Billy's calling to travel and preach endlessly would soon test their bond. Even so, Ruth remained a steady presence, the quiet strength behind the man stepping into a public life. Billy's ministry began modestly. After his ordination in 1940, he briefly led a small church in Illinois. Yet the pull of evangelism was stronger than any pastoral routine. By 1945, he joined Youth for Christ as a charter vice president. He traveled across the United States speaking to young people, students, and service members. He learned to connect, to listen, and to speak to hearts that were searching, skeptical, or broken. Each encounter shaped him, sharpening his ability to communicate faith in a way that felt personal and real. Billy rejected complicated theological debates. He preached in simple, direct language, focusing on sin, salvation, and the hope that faith could bring. His style was earnest, sincere, and easy to understand. People trusted him because he seemed genuine, a man who believed what he said and lived what he preached. As his voice sharpened and his message resonated, he began drawing attention. But even he underestimated where this path would take him. In 1949, Billy Graham stepped into a moment that would change everything. He launched a tent revival in Los Angeles, expecting just a few weeks of meetings. What happened inside that canvas tent, however, surprised everyone. The crowds grew day by day, swelling beyond what anyone imagined. Soon the revival became a city-wide phenomenon. Newspapers called it a canvas cathedral. Captivated by the honesty in his voice and the urgency of his message, people came from every walk of life, workers, students, housewives, and the weary alike. They came seeking hope, comfort, and answers to questions they often could not voice aloud. Graham's sincerity shone through every word. And even as he spoke of faith, his anti-communist rhetoric caught the attention of a nation still wary of the Cold War, lending him influence beyond the pulpit. As his influence grew, Billy realized he needed a structure to guide his expanding mission. In 1950, he founded the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association in Minneapolis. Later, he moved its headquarters back to Charlotte, North Carolina, closer to the farm where his story had begun. From this base, his voice would reach across the world. Over the course of his career, he preached in more than 400 crusades across 185 countries and territories. Live audiences numbered over 215 million, a staggering figure that barely captures the scale of his impact. Even more people heard him through radio programs like Hour of Decision, television broadcasts, and books and magazines. His message transcended borders, cultures, and languages, connecting with people in ways few public figures ever could. Some of his campaigns became historic milestones. In 1957, Graham returned to New York City, planning only 6 weeks of preaching. The city had other plans. He stayed 16 weeks. Crowds of more than 100,000 gathered at Yankee Stadium, and over 60,000. People made decisions for Christ during that single crusade. In a time of deep racial tension, Graham refused to preach to segregated audiences. He insisted that faith should be shared with everyone equally, seeing justice and compassion as inseparable from his mission. Billy Graham also reshaped modern evangelical media. He helped found Christianity Today in 1956 and later launched Decision magazine. Over his lifetime, he wrote 33 books, including his autobiography, Just As I Am, sharing the journey from a boy on a lonely farm to a man speaking to millions. His crusades spanned continents. His voice echoed in millions of homes, and his message of hope touched countless hearts. Yet behind the applause, headlines, and standing ovations, there were powerful forces quietly watching, weighing the influence of the man who had become both a spiritual guide and a public figure. The tent revival in Los Angeles had made him a legend. But it had also set him on a path where faith, fame, and scrutiny would collide in ways few could foresee. People who understood the influence he wielded and who were waiting to see how far his reach might go. The boy who once wanted freedom over faith had become a global figure. But the challenges ahead would test more than just his stamina. Billy Graham's influence reached the highest halls of power. For decades, he served as a spiritual advisor to U.S. presidents from Harry Truman all the way to Barack Obama. His anti-communist message during the early Cold War earned him praise from powerful figures, including media magnates like William Randolph Hearst. Everywhere he went, people listened. His words carried weight not just in churches but in the corridors of government and the living rooms of millions. Even as he spoke to nations, Graham tried to live his principles at home and in society. During the height of segregation, he insisted that his crusades be integrated. Black and white audiences sat together, sharing faith equally. He even worked alongside Martin Luther King Jr., who offered the opening prayer at one of Graham's New York crusade nights. Yet his civil rights legacy was complicated. He opposed segregation but did not join the historic March on Washington in 1963. His choices reflected the tension of his time and the difficult balance he tried to maintain between influence and caution. Behind the public acclaim, His personal life told a different story. Years of travel and endless preaching put immense strain on his marriage to Ruth. She raised their children largely on her own, providing the love and stability he often could not. In later interviews, Billy admitted regret. He wished he had studied more, preached less, and spent more time at home. His children carried the weight of a father who was often absent, facing relational distance, moments of rebellion, and the pressure of his towering legacy. Despite the personal sacrifices, recognition followed him wherever he went. He received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1983 and the Congressional Gold Medal in 1996. Wheaton College honored him for his humility, integrity, and extraordinary balance, remembering the man behind the public figure. Yet even as the world celebrated him, a quiet loneliness lingered in his home, a solitude that no applause could erase. Billy Graham had become a leader to nations. But at home, he remained a man wrestling with the limits of his presence and the cost of his calling. Beneath the fame and the honors, seeds of a deeper struggle were quietly growing, shaping the next chapters of his life in ways few could imagine. Even a life built on faith and purpose can face moments that shake the soul. For Billy Graham, one of those moments came through politics. His close friendship with Richard Nixon stirred controversy. Critics argued that he had become too politically aligned, that the trust he earned as a spiritual guide might have been used to navigate morally uncertain waters. Whispers questioned whether influence and faith could ever truly coexist without compromise. At the same time, his body began to betray him. In 1992, he was diagnosed with hydrocephalus, a dangerous buildup of fluid in the brain. The following year, he publicly revealed he had Parkinson's disease. Prostate cancer, broken hips, and other health complications followed, each one chipping away at the strength that had once carried him across stadiums and continents. The man whose voice had filled millions of hearts now faced a battle within himself. Yet even as his body weakened, his spirit refused to fade. In 2005, he delivered what he called his last North American crusade in New York City. The following year, he gave his final public sermon at a festival of hope in New Orleans led by his son Franklin. Every word, every gesture reminded the world of the sincerity and strength that had always defined him. In moments like his prayer at the National Cathedral after September 11th, he proclaimed with unwavering confidence that the nation would endure. Even in illness, he remained deeply involved with the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, guiding its mission and vision. Still, the years revealed that even legends are not untouched by human frailty. Just as his physical strength began to falter, secret documents and whispers from political and power circles started to surface. Questions arose that threatened to reshape the public image of a man whose life had always seemed larger than any controversy. The boy who once sought freedom, the preacher who spoke to nations, now faced a challenge he could never have predicted. And even in his final years, the world watched, waiting to see how the man who had guided millions would face the shadows that quietly closed in around him. Billy Graham passed away on February 21, 2018 at his home in Montreat, North Carolina, just shy of his 100th birthday. The world mourned the loss of a man who had touched millions of lives. Yet his final resting place carried quiet tension. His son Ned initially opposed burial at the Billy Graham Library, wanting instead a simple mountain interment. Even in death, choices about legacy sparked debate, reminding the world that family and faith are never without complexity. For decades, Graham's influence had drawn more than admiration. The FBI reportedly monitored him, watching a man whose words reached presidents, prime ministers, and powerful figures across the globe. Declassified records show meetings with world leaders, intelligence officials, and policymakers, raising questions about his role in Cold War politics. Graham's life was a blend of faith, influence, and scrutiny, a combination few could ever fully understand. In his later years, Graham wrote with surprising honesty. He reflected on fear, regret, and the burden of his public life. He did not want to be remembered as a saint, but as a sinner saved by grace. He urged his children, particularly Franklin, to lead with integrity and warned them of the dangers of misusing spiritual influence. His words revealed a man conscious of both his reach and his limitations. A man aware that even the most sincere intentions could have unintended consequences. His institutional legacy endures. The Billy Graham Library in Charlotte, spanning 40,000 square feet, stands.